moratorium/approval framework for the monuments update. I know Councilor Shea promised you we'd kind of keep you updated on that. I can kind of, that one can be very quick if need be. We're going to talk about the council meeting too. Then a Erky Reimagine update with Twyla, and is Tracy here too, or is it just going to be Twyla? It's Twyla, and then short-term rental discussion with Robert, our code officer. Really looking forward to the street scan presentation with Amanda, our public works administrator. I think it's kind of the first preview of the new sort of digital tracking of all of our infrastructure and assets, and I think you'll be unsurprised, Nancy, to find that our sidewalks are in worse conditions than our roads. I don't think you needed a LiDAR bike to take videos of that to tell you what you know already.
Well, you were pretty surprised when we were riding around and I said, you know, there used to be a nice sidewalk going down through Oak Street. Really? It was like, yeah, it's gone.
Well, there was a funeral today and people were walking down the street to get to the funeral home because they didn't feel they could use the sidewalk.
Yeah, the city is not really planned for walking around. We had some courthouse road discussions on that intersection, and it's just like, wow, it's like there's not really a way to walk across High Street yet.
That is why I have the plan coming together, absolutely.
And I am. So is my own commute as well to the bus stop.
True.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to bring it over to Danielle. Thanks. Should we try to bring
And
in?
he's supposed to be working.
Brittany?
Yeah, this is, I can do it for you.
Good, thanks.
Sit at the table. Actually, I've not been to one of these workshops yet. First of many, I'm sure.
Well, do you need the screen too? I don't have to. Okay. Here, thanks.
Ooh, some more paper clips.
Steve
Boy, you are easy, please.
I was raiding our closet this morning. Exactly.
You should be able to share your screen.
They work good for dress projects.
Okay, cool.
Slingshot thing?
Yeah, you can grab a hold of the thing.
Yeah, so, I think the last the council saw, there was a draft, for the license for adult use cannabis. To back up a little bit, there was a referendum passed a couple of years ago, by the residents of Ellsworth to allow for it, and so now we're putting it into place and, moving forward with that. Originally, the draft that may have been circulating earlier this fall was a standalone chapter. When we got it and started reviewing it, a lot of the feedback from the planning board and others that had reviewed it, a lot of the feedback was that there were issues with how things were done procedurally. And as we looked at it further, we realized that it made more sense to address this by folding it into chapter 14 of our ordinance, which is our licensing and permits chapter, and then adding the performance standards to chapter 56, which is our land use ordinance. So you'll see it in two different places. The content from that draft to now is relatively the same, and addresses those procedural issues that we were hearing about. Some of the differences, points of discussion, some updates since that last draft. We did remove impact fees, so that is no longer in there. Licensing fees, that is a point of decision that I'm asking from the council. Our neighbor brewer, they have it set at $5,000. Portland has it set at $10,000. So you can see there's a wide range. The state provides no guidance as to what we should do, and so our recommendation right now is $10,000 per license.
Is it annual or one time?
That's annual. So that's kind of the first point of discussion here. I can go through the rest of them and we can come back to that, if that makes sense.
So just to clarify, you have some municipalities, there are fees upwards of $20,000.
Yeah, we think Saco, but I couldn't confirm that.
Or Sanford.
Or Sanford. One of it's under
The
me.
range between 5 and 12.
Yeah.
And I think one of the differences between Brewer and Portland and Ellsworth too, not just our service center aspect, but like this is, you know, we're offering a limited amount of licenses here. So those two areas have, I believe, limited licenses for
Yes.
Brewer and Portland. So, you know, this is essentially, they've been granted a limited monopoly. And so to be on that kind of $10,000 range for a license in Portland, not necessarily the highest in the state, but, you know, this is a pretty good opportunity for those that, if there's only 3, then that could be it, but if there's a lottery, there's more, that's what the entrance fee would be.
10,000 makes sense to me. It's a good round number.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. We haven't voted on it yet, so give it some thought too. We did remove the reference to merit-based approval because we are doing a lottery. It's a level playing field to go into the lottery, so merit really doesn't have a role here because the people going into the lottery have a complete application, and that's what we're using.
So does that mean that they have already met a certain level of criteria?
Yes,
In order to enter
yes.
the lottery?
Yeah, they
So
have to
achieve
have-
the same goal?
Yes, exactly. They have to have their conditional license from the
Okay.
state, and that has a lot of requirements associated with it. There was also a financial security component in the previous draft. We took that out. That was a requirement to prove that they could invest or had the ability to invest a certain amount of money. We removed that. That got a lot of feedback to not have it in there.
What?
The folks who reviewed it, specifically the planning board, felt like it was not fair. I'll put it that way.
Why? I mean, that seemed, it seemed a very obvious point in the work up until now, so.
We
the
don't,
i-
yeah, so we don't require it for any other licenses, so I think
Right.
that was the thinking behind it, was that if we're not asking for this for other licenses, why are we asking for it here? Like, why this one specifically?
So I guess, thank you. Patrick, why was it, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while since I dove into this, but there was a reason this is a unique kind of business and,
Well, the issue with cannabis is that there's no local tax, right? So,
Right.
and, there is burden on the municipality as far as public safety and all that. So, one hope was that by ensuring that they make a significant investment in the property, that increases the value of the property, which thus would increase tax revenue for the town
Right.
via property taxes. I think and I guess it makes sense to me because we're folding this into the licensing ordinance, that are, trying to treat licensees as equal as possible, I guess the different types of businesses. All that being said, cannabis is a very different business than anything else that we allow, so I think it would also be, yeah, so, that wasn't my point, that was the planning board's point. My 2 cents is, we have a $10,000 license fee annually, so that's that does cover some city's costs, but then, that's not a small amount of money, times 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, however we end up having. And then, but it is, if they'll only require, because you can require financial, proof of financial ability in other contexts, and
Right.
it is done.
yeah, because this wouldn't be revenue to the city. This is just proving that it's a valid.
Yeah,
Investment, I think the original, I was kind of on the opposite end, and I still am, that like, we should have $1.5 million, as like, proof of like that much, cash on
I
hand.
think it was 1.5 million cannabis stores in Ellsworth.
No, $1.5 million like, to invest, because that's like, if we're gonna limit it to just 2 or 3, I'd like to have like the Brothers Cannabis, the Seaweed, there's one called Grass Monkey or something, Grass Monkey, that are like, they're almost like art stores. These are like $5 million, like major investments that are like tourist attractions. But I think John Stein made a point too at a previous, was like, well, then you're not letting the little guys like try to invest for $200,000, get that very specific license. You know, they might not have $1 to $5 million to invest in a building, but we're kind of kicking them out of the process for a smaller independent operator. You know, to me, the limited kind of 3, you know, I could argue for having a $1 million threshold of like, you know, certified financing or $2 million, so that you're kind of guaranteeing that there's people that come. But now I think in general though, we're going away from this, now we're trying to pick this merit, like we want to get the best possible one. And, you know, we want to, and if we're getting away from the merit with, like, you know, we're basically just saying now, if you meet the design standards from the state in these requirements and you have a complete application, then we're gonna put you into the lottery. And, you know, we're not gonna prejudice the big players that have all the money to spend on this. And that, you know, like that was kind of like the planning board and John Stein's, and just, we're gonna keep it to this lottery. It's gonna be 3 that get this, as long as they meet the standards, that's fair and equitable, and kind of levels the playing field. Somebody who operates 20 cannabis stores in Maine already and can invest $5 million in business right now, or if this is the first cannabis store you're ever gonna operate and you can complete the application and you have a place, and those people will be on a level playing field now.
So will all of the things that were in the merit criteria be incorporated into the application? So
I
we're not
believe so.
losing anything?
Yeah. And I'll see if I can dig out, because I don't know if I ever received the merit list. I'll have to look to early on drafts of it, and make
Yeah.
sure, but I'm pretty certain.
Okay,
'Cause
I mean,
that's
that
in
was the
there.
goal, was to make sure that just whoever gets it is ready to run a
Mhm.
legit, strong
Yeah.
business. So
Yeah.
if that's incorporated in this way, then I understand that.
And the state has some pretty strong requirements too,
Mhm.
and we're in alignment with the state requirements. So any place where the state would have required something, I did take that out of ours, just to keep it, you have to be in alignment with the state, and then this is our additional thing.
Yeah, I think just on that note, right, and, you know, I was one of the people pushing for having a really rigorous merit, you know, kind of threshold, because, you know, it's balancing of, we want, you know, voters said, we want this business here, we're concerned, we don't want to turn into, you know, pot row, or whatever, and so I think what the whole point of all that was like, is there a way we can best try to ensure that the businesses that do go in there are, you know, high quality business. And I think, end of the day though, I think we might have been getting too cute with it, and it's difficult to be able to execute that in the land use and licensing ordinance, whereas I think what we're doing now is, you know, the state does have, the way it works is like, go to the state first to get preliminary approval, then you come to the city to get your approval, then you go back to the state, so it's a pretty rigorous process. If you look at the state regs, it's, you know, they've been tailored over the years now, you know, ultimately, I think the major ones, right, it's like signage and like tinting of windows and smell and all that, it's all addressed in the state regs, so. You know, that's not to say in the future, if we see problems, you know, the city can't try to address it through updates.
Or if the state changes a standard that we do think is important, then we
Yeah,
can
then we can
put
always,
it in.
continue
Okay.
to require it.
Okay,
Yeah, because it always defaults to the most rigorous
mhm,
requirements, so.
great.
Okay, moving on, the next difference, the older draft, prohibited delivery, like off-site delivery, from the establishment. And in reading the state law, we actually can't limit that, we can't prohibit the deliveries, except if they're within our designated zones, our drug-free zones, for example. The only thing with that is that it has to be an employee of the store So you can't order DoorDash, that kind of thing. Internet sales are not okay because you need someone who works at the store to verify the age of the person receiving it. If it goes to a hotel, the hotel has to give permission for that delivery to occur. So if it's not a private address, then they need that permission, basically. The other part of that is that they can't do deliveries when the store is not open. So if our operating hours, and that's another thing in there, if our operating hours are set from 8 AM to 8 PM, they can't do deliveries between 7 and 8 AM and between 8 PM and 10 PM because work is closed. So that's one of the kind of content differences from the previous draft.
So what, I'm sorry, what
Yeah.
is the 7 AM to 10 PM?
That's in the state law. And so if our
I didn't know if the city had an ordinance I wasn't aware
No,
of.
that's the state law, yeah.
Okay,
So the state says that the hours of operation cannot be before 7 AM and after 10 PM. We can restrict it further.
that's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. We did add some language stating that medical caregivers are not permitted to apply for this license. They are not permitted to apply to retail licenses. That's a state law, so we're making sure that that's confirmed in there. One of the things that came up this morning in discussion is whether we want to allow our existing medical license holder to convert their license to an adult use. They would not be going through the lottery, they would just be converting their existing medical to adult. And so that is a question brought before you all as to your thoughts on that one, or if we stay the course.
And it says in addition to, so there would still be 3 or
Correct. Yeah,
Have you
so
heard
it's,
from them that they want to?
yes,
I've been approached, and I
Yeah.
think others have too, that they'd like the Cure Leaf,
Mhm.
which is also located in the overlay zone.
Right.
So, we know they've been operating in Ellsworth for, over a decade,
Yeah.
and if, I think with good success, there hasn't been any issues, they're a known quantity, and if they're, so it makes sense to me if we, successful business, and I think Cure Leaf, the company is pretty, there's multiple locations in Maine. So I think, in my 2 cents is, they've have a proven track record, this is the kind of, it seems like a safe, as far as we can be here to, have them, if they wanna convert, to let them to convert.
Right.
And it's in the overlay too, because it's on the High Street corridor there, so it fits that requirement as well.
And they, in the way, go ahead.
For context, there's only one existing caregiver license, or are there others through the town? Just
so we have one existing medical, and that's Cure Leave, and then my understanding is Boss Lady is something different.
There's dispensary and caregiver stores.
okay.
So,
Boss.
and they were originally treated differently under state law, and they still kinda are, but it's all kind of gotten blended together.
All right.
But in essence, originally when Maine first enacted the medical marijuana laws, there was only 8 dispensaries allowed in all of the state of Maine, and one of them was Cure Leaf.
Okay.
So they've been since the beginning. Then they removed, basically a dispensary, for lack of a better, description, is like, almost like a caregiver co-op.
Okay.
So, but now it really doesn't even matter. But that's one of the original 8 dispensaries in the state, whereas caregiver stores were stores that individual caregivers opened, and caregivers used to have a certain limitation on how many patients and like plants they can grow. And that's pretty much all gone out the window, so now it's pretty much unlimited there, but and it's a grandfathered, it was operating when the law changed in 2019, which said, hey, you can't just open a caregiver store, you have to go through a certain process. So that one location is grandfathered as a caregiver retail store.
But in some ways, it's a distinction without a difference,
Yeah.
because it operates as a medical dispensary.
Functionally.
Okay.
Where you need to have a medical card, you procure one pretty straightforward, I'm told, and then it effectively operates as a dispensary, but it's grandfathered in as this caregiver, which is why, so, and I guess that seems here that you can't, unlike Cure Leaf, we can't just say this caregiver can become retail.
Yeah.
even though it is effectively the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just Curaleaf license.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to note is that the state, for a variety of reasons, adult use cannabis is highly regulated by the state, whereas caregivers, there's fewer restrictions in certain aspects, and there's no testing, like the adult use requires testing and other things. So one thing is that if Curaleaf wants to convert, they're actually subjecting themselves to a more rigorous regulatory process and testing, and they would bring themselves into our licensing process, which allows us to regulate them more than this kind of grandfathered use. Again, I guess for me, it's all the more reason to, I think it makes sense to if they give them that option if they want to convert.
Yeah.
And they can't operate both at the same location without some like pretty decent construction. Because they have to have basically a Chinese wall between the two operations with two separate entrances and exits. So if they wanted to, they would have to go through a process of changing their interior
Which,
and probably some other things.
which would cost them a lot of money.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, to Patrick's point, I've been talking about Curaleaf, seems like they've been here a while, if they wanna transfer, yeah, I need to consider that, just allowing that here, but we still have the 3 in the lottery. And ideally, like, we'd get an additional 3 that are kinda like Curaleaf, I think that would be the ideal. The merit system would have allowed us to maybe choose that, but it would have had some potential legal liability to how we pick and choose those types of organizations, so that's kind of where we're at, this lottery system.
I'm not hearing any descending comments against that, so I think we'll move forward with allowing that. I'll figure out how to do that. Let's see,
You should reach out to the people from Curaleaf, I think they have.
and see, I'm sure they already have something, yeah,
probably
okay.
proposed.
Thank
They
you.
have a big law firm in Portland that's, they represent
Hmm.
a bunch of towns.
And I've been in contact with that legal person, so, yeah, thank you. As I alluded to, we did remove some requirements if they were duplicated by the state requirements, so some things like background checks, financial checks, in order to obtain the conditional state license, providing evidence that the license covers these things already, so if they provide the conditional, they've already checked those things off, so we didn't wanna duplicate that in our ordinance and confuse anything if things change. Performance standards, for hours of operation, we are recommending an 8 AM to 8 PM. I have no,
I mean, it is a recreational product. If it's allowed till 10, I don't understand shutting it down at 8.
some people wanted to restrict it, so it was a shorter window, so. If we wanna just go along with the state law, I don't have a problem with that either.
It's not like we're talking 2 AM. We're talking,
No.
I'm trying to think of, other businesses in town that allow people to relax and enjoy themselves. They're generally open till at 10 or so,
Yeah.
so. if I
Although
don't-
you can enjoy on premises, so.
I'm not talking about that.
Oh, okay.
The opportunity to enjoy yourself, I'm trying to be. I don't know, subtle or delicate, so.
Sure.
But
Maybe they'll encourage other people to stay up to 10, like a couple restaurants would be nice.
that's not a bad point.
So I'm hearing that we just align with the state law and have hours of operation 7 AM to 10 PM.
I thought 8 to 8 just made sense, but
I know it's even and you seem to like
I
rounding
like
the numbers,
even
but
round numbers.
10 is
but I-
also round.
I'd like to encourage Ellsworth to be a later
Yeah.
city.
Okay.
I'm persuaded.
I like it.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, I will update that for your voting draft. So we added language in chapter 56 for
I love when it
performance
starts
standards.
with woof. That's never good when I go woof.
No. It's because it's been discussed a lot lately. So we added language for the performance standards in chapter 56 to make sure that the store name and the exterior signage is discreet or tasteful. So including, avoiding words like marijuana or bud or any of the slang that is used for it. And we also are added language, to prevent advertisements of products written on the exterior of the premises. So
Yes.
written in grease paint on the windows or on the brick of the building, if that exists.
Does that include like neon signs and stuff like that?
Our neon,
Neon
do
can
we,
be
is that
artsy.
covered in our sign
Yeah.
ordinance?
Yeah.
There is an illumination component of our
Yes, there is,
signage.
but, like, neon signs are more or less exempt from any special treatment. It's basically considered a normal sign.
Do we want to limit that then?
Well, I'm thinking, doesn't Rose, what's the tattoo shop in town?
Ghost Rose.
Don't they have it's a nice looking.
Well, the Grand is a giant one.
Thank you.
Oddly enough,
Yeah,
like,
the whole
Yeah.
sign.
I can see that
Yeah.
from my back porch.
Yeah.
I think it's just the flashing marijuana leaf in neon green.
Yeah, the leaf is actually illegal per state law.
Illegal per
Yes.
state law.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they can't do that.
Yeah, they can't have,
It's like the international
yeah,
symbol
that's the thing, it's
for.
like, if it's like the green.
it's the green
neon,
plus, that's okay.
Like that would be fine. That's like the interesting thing about signs in general is just, you know, it is a little bit objective. It's pretty hard to be like, this is exactly, that's nice and classy, that's like absolutely not what we want here. But sometimes neon's nice and classy, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's,
No, you're right.
you know,
Neon, yes. I don't wanna prohibit neon signs.
like
Very
a-
good examples of good ones here,
A
but.
giant joint that's neon, then
Yeah, that's what I
Spitting
want.
smoke.
That's what I don't.
not as much.
Yeah.
We
And I
need
think-
classy.
I think that's limited in the state law as well.
Yeah, the state
Like
law-
they have specific sign language in their law.
And a lot of it's designed to, you know, prohibit any kind of marketing that can be considered for
Right,
children.
enticing.
Enticing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We are emphasizing the tinted windows. That is one place where my rule of not repeating the state is, I'm ignoring. I want to make sure that that's in there because it's kind of a different thing. So tinted windows are included in chapter 56. The original draft and medical dispensaries require review by planning board for new or relocated as part of, they're considering them at, like they would a major site use plan. The planning board does not want to be involved in that. And so they don't feel like it's necessary, and it's not a requirement by the state, so we did remove that.
And that puts it in line with most other businesses.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, no other business is required to go through that group.
Unless they're doing a construction that triggers. planning
Exactly.
board
Well,
review.
Unless it is a major site
Technically, I
plan.
think the dispensaries are required to, if that would ever, were to have changed hands, it has to go back to the planning board. But that would be the one exception, and we're not ever anticipating another one coming to town, so it's a moot point.
Yeah. And then finally, our zoning overlay does allow locations to be within 500 feet of a school. And this is actually less restrictive than the state. The state says 1,000 feet, but then gives us the ability to set it to 500 feet. The reason why we want it to be 500 feet is that zoning overlay is not very big. And if we did 1,000 feet, there's no place where a single business could set up. And so we wanted to, because there are just so many in that area. So Robert did that analysis, and so we're recommending the 500 feet.
And it's still in the height, the overlay is in essence the High Street
Yes.
corridor.
It's from the like if you were to work backwards from the Bar Harbor town, or from the Trenton Town Line on the Bar Harbor Road, out until the end of the Shaw's Plaza at Washington Street.
Mhm.
It goes, and then Myrick Street down East Highway.
Are there schools there? There's the,
Yes,
There's
and
the
there's
daycare.
daycares count towards that, so yes, there are.
okay.
There's a school.
Can't let those
Myrick
daycare kids
Academy.
get out and stuff. Those 4-year-olds try and buy and drag.
Out of control.
Gosh, I'm running out of time, you guys.
Yeah.
So there's that. Any questions about those differences from the previous draft?
No, I think this, you know, we kind of threw a lot in there and I think we trimmed it out to get it to.
So when I missed the cannabis, either council meeting or workshop somewhere in the fall, so I'm catching up from like in the summer. But we had talked about maybe one downtown, and that's no longer the case. We've got Boss Lady is here,
Yeah, there's one there.
but we had talked about like, it brings people into the downtown, which we like, and now.
With the
steps back away
setbacks,
from-
with setbacks from schools and everything,
Okay,
and the
schools
drug,
and
and the
churches
drug-free
and-
zones, the
Okay.
Harbor Park and everything, it makes it really difficult, almost impossible to find even a single location downtown that's in play.
And what about Water Street as we hope to redevelop that?
Water Street would be even closer to the Harbor Park, which is a drug-free zone, and you have a 1,000-foot
That's why,
setback from that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next steps, I wanted to share that with you. Oh, and just so you know, these drafts of our licensing chapter and the performance standards in 56 have been shared with OCP, so with the state. And they provided some good feedback and caught some things for us. And one of the things that they caught is that they are phasing out the use of the word marijuana in place of using the word cannabis. And so for adult use, we've updated everything to reflect that shift. But we do want to change that eventually for the medical license. And there are a couple of other things that we want to update for medical as we were going through this exercise. And so that'll be addressed in the future. Next steps are that we're developing some one-pagers to help support the departments that'll be implementing parts of this license. So clerk's office, there's a conditional state license letter that we have to fill out, so I'll be working with Sue to make sure that they have all the information they need when they're doing the intake of everything and determining completion. Police department, there are a couple of things that they'll be needing, so if we can provide a draft letter for their security plan or something like that to help them understand. We have the performance standards. They also need a letter from the life and safety officer. So those kinds of things, we'll be developing them and educating the departments that touch this. And then developing some frequently asked questions for applicants and the general public to put on our website. I've gotten questions like, if there are fewer than 3 applicants, do you do the lottery? And the answer is no, but that's not really clear in the ordinance, so I just want to make sure that questions like that are addressed. Let's see here. And then I have in your packets here, the third component is the timeline, just so you all are aware of what's coming up. There are actually 3 parts of this before we are ready for prime time. The first part is the licensing ordinance adoption, and that's on the agenda for the January meeting. The next step is for planning board to review and approve for recommendation the performance standards that are in chapter 56. So once they do that, they're gonna get the draft this week and then vote on that in the February meeting. And so that'll be ready for council to approve in March. We also need to update the zone to adopt the zoning overlay for this. That is the third component, and that requires a citywide mailer. We're waiting until March to do that. And that is because as part of the comprehensive ordinance review we're doing, there are some additional zoning updates that we need to make. And so we want to make it one mailer because that is one less mailer to pay for. And the other is that the state does have some reimbursable costs that we can take advantage of in relation to opting into adult use cannabis. So the administrative, the legal, all of those kinds of things, we can ask for reimbursement on that. So if we combine everything into one mailer to rule them all, we can be reimbursed for that cost. So that is our recommendation moving forward for that.
It
So that's
sounds like
why we're
it's
waiting
on
until
sale,
March.
so I'm all
It's
for
okay, there you go. It's a BOGO deal right there.
One of my favorites, yes.
And so that, in terms of planning board to get everything in a row for this, that's where it lines up. And so that puts us into an April scenario for opening the application period. The application period will be open for 30 days, so my recommendation is to do it mid-April to mid-May, and that gives us enough wiggle room to confirm the licenses and do the public notice for the council meeting to approve the licenses. Approving the license, and so that'll happen in the June meeting. It is a conditional approval. because they still have to go through the lottery. So what we're doing is the council is, just like any other license, they're approving the license, it's complete, we're approving it, but the license is issued upon condition of being successful in the lottery. So anyone going into that lottery has already received the council approval.
And then did you say they have to go to the state one more time? Or
Yes,
that
they
one?
do.
Okay.
So once
But
the
that's
lottery
just
is
for fun,
held,
right?
what's that?
That's just perfunctory though?
Yeah.
Okay.
So once the lottery is held and we have the results and everything, there's a form for us to fill out, provide to the applicants, they take that back to the state, and that starts the clock and the process for the state to respond to the active license, is what it's called. Yeah, so the state has 90 days to respond to that active license request. We have 90 days to respond to our applications. And so this is all planned out to make sure we don't exceed that 90 days. And then backing up, the conditional also has a 90-day window from when it's applied for and when the state has to have it issued. And so this is built so that if someone who is starting from scratch and has not started the process and wants to wait to see if Ellsworth approves the license, if they're being conservative, then this would allow them to complete that process in time and keep it fair. So it sounds like it's a lot of moving parts. It is, but they're intentionally placed.
So you mentioned something that piqued my curiosity. When you talked about we are eligible for reimbursement for some of the time that's been invested.
Mm-hmm.
As we were going through this, and again, knowing that we've been talking about this for, is it 2 years, is it just a year? It is just a year. Any sense of how the dollar value of city resources that have been put into preparing for this?
I'm gonna be pulling that together.
Do you mean that is all reimbursable?
Yeah, according to their website, so staff time, legal consultation, any of the administrative things, providing notice, mailers, that kind of thing, are all things that are listed as eligible. Up to a cap of 20,000, and it's a one-time request, so we haven't submitted anything yet
Right.
because we still have costs that we're incurring, but I'm starting to pull together.
I wouldn't be
what that
surprised
looks
if we're gonna go over 20,000, because this has been a really thoughtful process,
It'd be close.
yeah.
If we could count raise time.
Well, I was gonna ask about volunteer efforts. They do,
If
they're
we
solid
needed match
value.
for it, that would be great in kind
Yeah.
match, but this is an unmatched grant almost, it's kind of nice. So I know I'm over by 9 minutes,
That's
so-
all right.
No, this is really thoughtful.
Okay.
I was just gonna say,
That's all I have.
I do wanna kind of cede my time on the moratorium approval framework. It's okay, Council Shea, in general, I was just gonna say, it'll be on the council meeting. I'm just gonna ask for a moratorium on memorials and,
Yeah.
until a regulatory framework is passed. I may have one that we can consider then. I got a great, and I'll hand this out to you all. I got a packet, usually when I get a packet like this to myself as city manager, that's hand done, it is, oh my gosh, I'm about to be yelled for something. And I even had a child send me one once. This one actually was just the exact opposite. It was from somebody in Trenton that said they zoomed into the December 15th meeting, thanking me for the option. Saw the discussion on the Wasn't City properties. They'd actually recently donated one. It's for Glenn Greenlaw, not the George Floyd one. And saved me some legwork. They sent me a copy. They had a lot of experience with this. Portland's regulations are in here. They did have kind of, I know the Arbor Commission wasn't terribly interested. We had a recent email on that, on the tree piece. But maybe we can kind of separate this into a tree memorial, have those go. They include some things on the township and the Jersey Shore and National Park Service regulations for Acadia. I like a lot of these kind of concepts. I feel like this one I could probably put together pretty quickly. I think in general the point is, if you wanted, and they actually also said, important for regulations and probably having a local connection is good to have in these things
Yeah.
moving forward.
And if the council would like to have a little more information, it's pretty easy for me to drag in the policy that Maine Veterans Memorial Cemetery Systems had, seeing how I used to be a supervisor there. Nothing got planted put unless we approved where it went. So-
Yeah.
And that even went to the headstones, if family members showed up and tried to alter it and make it different than what it was and didn't correspond to being uniformity. It, it wrinkles a lot of people.
Yeah, I think we could consider kind of, if we have some general standards and city council approvals, I think it'll help guide kind of future requests on this too, so it doesn't become like, maybe there should be a local, but if you don't have those to kind of, it's hard to, you know, to anchor in that, and then you really do have to decide. if you need to-
Basically, for future, we need to have some guidelines set forth.
So I love that. I do want to just circle back, maybe open it up just to see, because I know we have Ray, another citizen here on cannabis too, but we're gonna have a request, I think the building that has Boss Lady Genetics, I believe, was recently purchased, and they'd like to kind of transition that caregiver license to a Marijuanaville license, and it was oddly enough that that came through, because I was thinking, like, I just took a picture when I was in Duxport on, like, this is kind of an example of, you know, they have a nicer, I think it's called River Driver Cannabis or something, which is more kind of casual and low-key, and then there's this Marijuanaville, which is a big, as you pointed out, kind of pot leaf, a lot of, like, neon kind of colored, just written, no.
Yeah.
This would be what not to do.
Yeah, and then I'm also
Yeah.
thinking this isn't our like, this is, so I know there's a
These are the
grandfather.
people that bought Boss Lady Genetics building.
Correct.
They want to move this
And-
business into.
And the
Main Street.
request for the new business license, which is a grandfathering, and that, you know, preliminary conversations with legal counsel is that this grandfathering, you know, isn't like a new license, it's basically, it's just kind of an ownership change, and that it is. So, but, to the points all made here, right, which is recreational, you gotta have blacked out, tinted out windows. You can't have a marijuana leaf on this. This, which is in 500 feet of, or 1,000 feet of, you know, drug-free zones, schools, et cetera, like, even in our overlay zone, this wouldn't be allowed here. But we will have, like, potentially could have a marijuana leaf, this
Why?
types of signage, because of
We
the
don't.
caregiver, like, status and the transitions. So I don't know, Robert, if you,
Okay.
if you have anything else here, I know you've got a couple.
Yeah, we're gonna jump right up.
And this is on the city
No.
council meeting as a new
Don't
business
sit on your
license.
cape there, Superman.
So wait, you say this is on this month?
This is on this month, there was a request from the business to have, so it's on the new business license request.
Okay.
You know, so it's something, it wasn't planned to be medical, or the
It's a
recreation.
happy coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with the caregiver license, there's a lot more of a gray area about what's allowed and what's not. Clearly, they have a lot more leeway in their signage. I've been in contact with them about the signage, and we haven't had any, I haven't seen anything about what they're planning yet. But I think that,
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, what is the current ordinance has no,
nothing about
No
caregiver,
restrictions.
because it's
So are we
it's
allowed
a gray area, it's not a dispensary technically.
So are we,
Yeah,
are we allowed to put these same things that we've been working on onto a caregiver license?
Well, we don't even have a caregiver license, it's a grandfathered legally gray area.
Okay, so we have magic markers, and
Yes.
we're working on the ordinance. This seems a prime time to ensure that the standards we've been working on so far for up on High Street are also especially held on Main Street. And there's an opportunity to be able to put these standards we've been working on to avoid that.
I guess it would depend on how quickly we could get it pulled together, but, I mean, they're gonna be on the agenda the same night you vote on
So
rec
what
cannabis, so.
we're shifting off of,
So I think the, you know, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the general, no worries, thank you, Patrick. I think the general gist here is like, this is not what we want on Main Street. We would like the same type of design standards for signage, you know,
right,
lease, you know, tinted windows, et cetera, to apply to, you know, to caregivers on Main Street right in downtown in the same way, you know.
so,
So how do we do so? And I think We'll talk, does that require an emergency meeting before this
Or do-
city council meeting?
Do we have the option of not approving or postponing or something there?
There's an option there, it's up to the council, you guys.
I don't feel
Good.
comfortable
Table it.
approving that
Exactly.
until we've got the standards in place that we've been working for over a year on, for up on High
See,
Street.
but the problem here as well is that we had to add language to make this also apply to caregiver. What we're working on now does not apply to caregiver. So even if we pass that, it doesn't.
I understand
Yeah.
that additional work will have to be done.
Mhm.
I think we have to get that additional work done before
Okay.
we have a
So-
transition that would allow
So-
exactly what we're trying not to have in town.
For, there's always the option to table if you
Okay.
feel like we need to have more
I
thought on
anticipate
it.
that
Okay.
it will be tabled.
So
And let them know, it's not, it's just,
I'll talk to them,
Like
and this
they're
is
not
kind
listening
of,
tonight,
this is the big
but-
concern, is the signage, the
The whole-
naming, this type of thing, that it would be, but then, so we'll have kind of two streams to run, is like, as currently stated, this sounds like a table until, or can we provide an emergency meeting at the front end, properly noticed, to get this to be, that would have the same kind of design standards of the things we're gonna pass for recreational cannabis, and that if those standards are met, and this group could meet that, and agree to those, that maybe the council at that time could move forward.
So I think
That would include even them having to change their name, because we're saying
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
use of marijuana, or the marijuana
I-
leaf, which is their logo.
I believe the company name is something else, doing business as Marijuanaville, so.
Oh, okay.
And I believe there's a fair, because this isn't just in Bucksport, and this would be, I think there's a fair amount of these marijuana mills. in-
Yeah,
in-
there's a lot.
in-
I'm
in-
holding back here, but the gentleman has 10 stores and he wants to have 20 by the end of next year. He's extremely aggressive.
So,
I have
Where was this
personal
taken?
speaking with him.
Bucksport,
This was taken in Bucksport?
I took it, the picture, yeah, because I was like, this, and it wasn't because, I didn't even know Marijuanaville was applying for this at the time, it's just, I was driving back to Kansas
Was
City.
their product any good?
Yeah, it is a medical store. So it is one of those caregiver things where you need a license, so, so I did, but I kind of saw the writing, I was like, this is what, especially because there's another type of recreational cannabis store there that's very
there's
discreet, I think it's
I
called River
drive by
something.
3 on my way.
And this one really stood out as like a shining beacon of, just like, and then I saw this as a new business license, I was like, wow, I just took a picture of this, it's like,
So they have purchased the building and they are purchasing the business.
Yes.
yeah, and we've been told by legal that that is not considered like, because we don't, it would be still grandfathered in from that gray zone from 2019, even potentially with this name change and all these other things. And that it's not, as you saw there, unlike Curaleaf, because it's not a dispensary, it's a caregiver, that's not like something we can allow them to transfer to retail, even, and then have our design standards from the retail regulations that we're passing. Furthermore, like, even if we wanted to do that, that zone specifically is so close to our drug-free zones that, like, we would have to either eliminate our drug-free zones,
But
in
So
order
so
to
the state law does not prohibit us from taking the standards we've developed over here and putting them to apply here.
Not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
no, I don't
And
believe so.
that's all we need to do.
But yeah, so it's just, that it creates a timing issue though, it's worse.
We already solved that.
Yes, but you have, so.
And I'm sorry, we hit a time boundary, but this is such an important one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but did Ray, do you have anything that you wanted to add here, or?
One question, you said Curaleaf is thinking about changes. How many, is that going to change the number overall, or are you still working on 3, including Curaleaf, or 4 if Curaleaf changes?
I think to make it fair to those who would be coming new into the system, we'd still keep 3 open lottery, and then Curaleaf would just be essentially allowed to, if they so choose, or, not Curaleaf specifically, but dispensaries, that's our only one, would be able to, so it would be 4 retails potentially if they wanted to migrate over, and then there'd be 3 additional that would not be required.
And on that, does that mean we're opening up a dispensary license, an available dispensary license
would.
here in Ellsworth that does not have the same regulations,
Correct. It would, they would have the same regulations that Curaleaf currently has.
which is the same that Boss Lady has?
No,
marijuana?
boss
No,
lady is a
boss lady's
caregiver.
different.
We,
Okay.
in chapter 14, there are rules for dispensaries.
Okay, okay.
We're,
thank you.
we're
Gotcha.
adding them
This is the caregiver
correct,
thing.
but
And Curaleaf
That
going
is
from
different.
medical to recreational, as Patrick kind of noted, the inverse nature of this, like, becomes more regulated.
Right, okay.
Testing are requirements, sure, there are, dispensaries that do, make sure they don't have pesticides, et cetera, and testing requirements. But the recreational is actually more regulated than the medical side.
And
and rec is actually lower potency. Medical can have
Right.
higher potency.
So allowing Curaleaf to do that switch, I think in some ways just
But
makes
the
it.
design standards are,
Are still would still be in place for a new dispensary. The place on Main Street is different because it's in that gray area.
gotcha.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Curaleaf as a dispensary pretty much already meets the recreational design standards, I'd say. Boss Lady Genetics and potentially marijuana mill would not meet the recreational design standards, but the caregiver seems to be a unique category. So
Yeah,
that's-
we don't have any design standards for caregiver because.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what we'll
I can only deal with what we currently,
I know,
I can only
I know.
enforce what we actually have. We don't have any currently.
And we get to go with, oh, but we can fix that.
Yes, well,
And
you have that
anything
power,
else,
I
Rob?
don't.
The
We're
only other
15.
thing I think 10,000 for the fee, if that's what you're looking at, I think that's probably a good fee. And that's one of the things, that my problems, going back for the whole year or so we've been working on this, I could never find out from anyone, and this isn't casting aspersions on anyone, but there was never, the fees, basically, we're looking at fees substantially less, in the 2,000, 2,500 range for the licensing fee, which I thought was crazy, and I thought you should get what you should get, because they're basically getting a monopoly. So I think 10,000 is fair. Then you came up with this idea that came from someone, I think, on the council, which was all these various use fees, or whatever you call them, which has gone the way they've gone, which is the correct way.
Great. Well, I'm with you, Ray. I wanted like $100,000 fee to come in and then see if people apply, and then if not, we can lower it, but that was, as well, probably.
I was never that high.
Let's keep talking here.
But did you have anything, what was your name
Nothing
again?
else.
I'm sorry.
Did you have, do you have a lottery fee, if you determined the lottery fee?
There's no,
The
as far as I
lottery
know, there's no fee
application
for the
fee?
lottery. It's just a fee for the application.
Oh.
Because that would.
And so the renewal every
Business
year, unless
licenses.
you decide to change it, it will always be the 10.
Correct, yeah, well, we could potentially
Yeah.
change the fee at some point.
Yeah, no, I was just curious.
Yeah, but
Was it
there's
clear
no
on that?
fee in the lottery itself, it's just an application fee.
The one thing there were two concerns that I just happened to have. One had to do with the hours. I think that the hours should at least be the same as the hours for the medical stores. I don't know what the medical store hours are here, but if the 8 to 8 is more prohibitive than the existing medical, I don't think that's fair. Because I don't know that we're competing, we're competing with each other to an extent. That being said, our store hours, brace yourself, I have to pay the payroll. They are from 7 in the morning until 10 at night, Monday through Saturday. We have not had any issues with any, and what's happened is other people are beginning to adopt, not in all locations, because it has to do with the location in the city that we're in. But I know, for example, if I were to go, if I had a license and I'm going into a mall, and that mall, I didn't have the same hours that I currently have. Sunday is much more restrictive, so that people can have, the day of rest, the day of church, and, I think our hours are 9 to 6. But we have never had any issues. And I did want to say one thing that you may not be aware of, and that is that until probably 6-7 months ago, OCP had directed us to keep our doors locked. And I thought that was great. So if we had customers coming in, they were carded at a window.
Oh, interesting.
We unlocked the door, and then we locked the door back up. And we had some control with security. We've got 14 security cameras, but, they record what's after the fact. So then, they've changed, and they're more liberal. And now you can keep your doors open Well, that put me in a dilemma because I don't want one person working with doors unlocked in the city between the hours of 8 and 10. Not that we have a large crime rate, but I just felt morally responsible to make sure we have 2 people working. And that has been good, but I always have this fear that, you know, you can have people rushing in, you know, because it's a cash business. And we've got, you know, we've got everything they want to make some quick money. So anyhow, that being said, so what I'm trying to say with that is that I think the owners of the various AU businesses are very cognizant of the fact that they have to watch security. And we have just never, I mean, we've had some strange people with tails, et cetera, you know, coming in and wacky people. And we've just nicely directed them out. And it's very easy to do that when you have 2 alert employees, you know, and they just tactfully do that. But again, back to the hours, I think, you know, the reason that we increase the hours, you know, nobody really wants to show up at 7 and work that shift, but we did it to accommodate the customers, because we have a lot of customers that are going to want to buy something on the way to work. And then we have customers that work longer hours. We have customers that are commuting and are just going by our area late. We have enough customers between the hours of 8 and 10 for me to be willing to pay a large hourly rate for 2 people each of those hours. So
Do you wanna pull it back to
there's a
7 a.m.
need,
to
there's a
10 or
benefit,
to
you
10?
know.
Well, that's what we had talked about, was aligning the hours of operation with the state, which is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
7 to 10,
So yes,
so we'll-
and I'm looking at our ordinance for medical, and we don't have hours of operation in there.
I'm not surprised. They don't have a lot of restrictions.
Well, and if
But-
Cure Leaf switches over, then that's,
Then it's
because
moved.
we're not allowed, we have a moratorium on the medical anyways, so that kind of,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
7 to 10, and that would be the.
So I don't want to monopolize your time, but the only other thing that really concerns me, just because of me personally, I guess, is the fact that you have such a long period in front of you to procure those licenses, for individuals to procure those licenses. If I'm sitting here, you guys know I've been here for months. So I just kind of, because I don't know about government, how government works, I guess I should, but, so I just naively, I already applied for the conditional license, I got it in 6 weeks, so that's gone. And then I've also made a commitment, because it's my understanding, even with the lottery, when you do your application for the city, that you have to, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to indicate that you have a place of business to go to, and that it's in the zoned areas that you've determined. So then somebody like myself has already gone ahead, and I'm doing what I would do in business, which is to stick my neck out a bit and make a commitment to somebody, and they've made a commitment to me. Now, that commitment has already been extended a couple of times. This is my problem. I know it's not yours, but I just wanted to show you, you know, from my perspective. So now, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do if we're extending this all the way to July. And one problem that I see for you guys is the season. Your big season is going to be during this time. I mean, am I reading this correctly? I mean, the licensing deadline is going to be July 5th?
Yeah,
Is that what's
so if
right?
we open it on April 15th, then I think something, I'll have to look back. I worked out a bunch of timeline scenarios to see if we could do this faster, and we can, but that gives us no ability to do public notice or feedback. And I
see.
don't think that we wanna go that route. I don't recommend that at all.
No.
And so like the earliest that we'll have everything wrapped up for those 3 pieces that I was talking about is, ironically enough, the April 20th meeting for council. I did not do that on purpose, I promise you. I was also trying to get things done before the budget council meeting, which is
Yeah,
the
we have
following
to
That's what I'm
month.
getting at, is, you know, you're gonna have
Yeah.
a build out. Like
I
for
hear
me,
you,
I
yeah.
would have a huge build out. And that's probably gonna take 6 weeks, you know, just being aggressive.
Let's go, come on in.
Again, that's,
Yeah, council workshop.
so, you know, by the time the stores would open, and you gotta procure, you've gotta hire all of your people, you know, and so there's a window there too. That's probably, I'm gonna say, 2.5 to 3 months, you know, to get that settled. So you're actually looking at, what, October?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
but-
just so you know that, you know.
Yes.
Yep,
you know, I was-
October is kind of the, yeah.
That was
we
my
will miss
estimation, and I think
a
that's
bit
in
of
the.
the season, but that's, you know, that's kind of where it's at with the public notice process and the planning board
Yeah,
having to
that's
approve the.
fine,
Yeah.
I'm just showing you from my end.
Yeah.
But most other people aren't quite where I am.
Yeah.
in this
You're the-
process,
the-
So that's,
And I'm sorry,
And
we
you're
have-
the
we do
other
have to jump
direction.
to,
that's
uh,
fine,
the
thank you
Erky.
for the
Thank
time,
you.
thank you for the time.
Twyla, can we bring you up to?
If it's possible, actually, to share my slides, if it's
Yeah.
not,
I just
because
gotta-
I changed the first one, otherwise I'll just go with what I have. Super easy. Charlie, given the time, do you wanna cut, do you wanna have like 10 minutes maybe?
Yeah, 10, Robert, I know maybe we could cut a little bit in the short term. as
Yeah,
well.
I can speak up.
Well,
Make it
it's
short.
not, I mean, it's not coming right up, Erky.
Yeah.
Everything's actually.
What do I have to do before?
I just added you to
Teams?
Yep. And so accept.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then you should be able to share your screen.
There you are. So, this was, these are a lot of slides that were for EDDC, so I'm just gonna focus only on reimagining Erky. Quickly, so, just 4 goals in the past 6 months till now, for me anyway, was to look at, and not necessarily order of importance, but look at renovating the physical space. It is tired in many ways, the building.
1970s was a great day.
Yeah. And we saw from the HR offices moving in and the work they did, which was, you know, they painted and some new flooring, and it's really nice. Like just a little bit can go a long way. So we're looking at that. It's gonna have to come in phases, but goal number 2, really important to me, so it should have been number 1 here, is to perform a financial audit and see how much is actually coming in rent, how much we could make if we bump it up to market rate, and what that looks like for all the tenants, because there are varying degrees of, like, some are paying almost market rate and some are paying way under, and then we have a few vacancies, and then new spaces that we can rent out. The third goal is to determine best and highest use with local stakeholders, EVDC and city staff, which we have been doing and will continue to do. And goal number 4, which I haven't really discussed a lot even with you, Charlie, but I keep thinking about, especially in the coming year, I'm like, as we determine a future use or uses, like, do we also consider a rename or rebrand? You know, Erky is like, everyone's like, what's Erky? If you know it, you know, if you don't, you don't. So, that would be another thing to consider. Where's this not going? Okay, so just a summary from 2025, and if this does get presented at the council meeting like Tracy did last year, she can present more on this, because I was only here for half of the year, but we focused on local food economy according to the comp plan and the business attraction plan. Continued with education and entrepreneurship, and that came through a series of entrepreneurial exploration courses or classes, and also Bring Your Device to Lunch was held there. And then we continued with the co-working space, existing tenants, and I'll just talk a little bit about the lab update in a minute. And then we continued to look for the new year at food initiatives. And again, a year focused on food for 2025. Tracy did a great job with holding an Ellsworth food forum, getting together some people to be on a committee, and that has grown to almost 25 from the initial 6 people that signed up. Tracy attended on behalf of Erky, the Down East Food System Partnership in Machias after the first one that was here in Ellsworth, so we continue to be a part of that partnership. And then we had a food fest that was part of Autumn Gold, and that was the picture actually on the previous slide, and that was it went off very well. A lot of people interested in the food system in a new way. And then the Ellsworth Farmers Market reached out and are interested, and I think have since or in the process of signing a lease to move to Erky for the next season. And the 3 times they were there, I think it was, before the season ended, were very positive and well attended, which is the picture you see there. And then, so this is just showing again some of the teaching or workshop series that happened there. Something coming up here on January 22nd is what we're doing to kind of bring the focus on food system to Ellsworth and Hancock County. And we're in communication with the Down East Food Partnership because we don't want to be separate from them, but they understand that we're moving forward maybe a little bit faster pace for Ellsworth. So we're having this, 4-hour, we're calling it a symposium, but kind of like a working meeting with local stakeholders, and our keynote speaker is Suzanne, I'm forgetting, Lee, from UNAME. So she's going to come and speak to us. She's a faculty fellow at the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions. And then we have planned also these other workshops coming up. Let's talk food, the business of food, and growing the business of sustainable farming. So a lot of focus on food for 2026. And then again, we want to maintain the co-working spaces. So the former lab, as you can see from the picture, has been emptied out. The conference room is still a larger space that you can rent, and then we still have office, co-working spaces. Oh yeah, the conference room I have on there twice, but yeah, so we still have, a lot of spaces available and some new spaces with this lab. We're gonna have new flooring put in, have it painted, have that wall taken out there, at least half of it, to open it up a little bit more and make it a larger meeting space. And that may potentially be a community kitchen, it could be a commercial kitchen. That's all part of the reimagining, but it would be large enough to do that. And I think that's it. Sorry. And then I can answer any questions about that or a little bit about budget questions. I've started the financial audit, but I can, I don't know if this is the appropriate place to talk numbers, but I do have some numbers if folks are interested.
Yeah, I think kind of from my perspective, I know Roddy and you all are in discussions, we kind of did the Moore Center, the city kind of rearranging CAM spaces, and here's how much the square footage is, here's how much it costs, here's what's, one of those pieces, and how do we apply that kind of knowledge and expertise and skill set to the Erkey building? How much does it cost us to maintain this? I think when I arrived, Steve, you'd kind of pointed out, we just keep kind of plugging money into this thing, and there's not like the hard details of what are the opportunity costs, what is the actual, so to me that's the kind of inflection point, at least from what I'm seeing now, is, in some of this reimagining, is that the food kind of emphasis is, is like probably the best option of the reimagining space. I'd say in some ways similar to these centers for innovation and this that were kind of the rage in the 2010 to 2015 zone. There's a bunch of federal and state grants, and people grab those for that. There's a lot of things in the blue economy now, and the food service space, and industrial community kitchens, and then I know Nancy, there was a GrowSmart hosted a conference on this up at the Woodlawn, and you could just see there was 100 people in that event. That was the first time when I was like, wow, there is like a local.
There's a there.
There's a there. There's people that want like Ellsworth as a service center, as a hub for this kind of food service aspect. I've toured Belfast's farmers market, the indoor one that they have there. Bring the outdoor piece here. Like if we're gonna kind of reimagine that space to focus on one thing, it seems pretty clear to me like this that it would be that kind of food community space. Or I think what's the opportunity cost, right? To Steve's very valid points here. What is it costing the city to do that type of activity? And to me, that's the key inflection point. Is we could take these spaces and just rent them out at pretty close to market rate, and give to budget positive, even for the contractor kind of hosting the building, and the city, as just a co-working space, won't be costing the taxpayer potentially $1 if we want to orient like that. But essentially, in that scenario, we're bringing it back to its original use, which was, rented out to therapists in that building, and so the city essentially would not really be using it as a city community space in that scenario, but more of like an exclusively kind of co-working space, which is in our business attraction plan to provide co-working spaces of this type, and we can get to budget positive. But that would be that really to me are the two potential options.
It's just in that, though. I don't
really see
the
Could there be
co-working
like a
space.
balance?
Yeah, I So,
Because it seems like it could be an ideal space for both, because,
yes. I don't.
yeah, like you get maybe people in with, look, this is a community space, this is a food focus, and then it's like, oh, people may wanna have offices that are tied to it. It could be a lovely feedback loop, is my
Yes.
thought, that it doesn't have to be an either or.
I agree.
As long as it doesn't cost the city money.
Or
No,
that the city is getting value
Well,
from something.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
try to calculate that, but then very quickly, just from the initial financial audit, if we brought if it's fully occupied with the spaces we have now, and that's not including the lab space that could become the commercial kitchen or the conference room. Well, no, it includes like a projected conference room use each month, but it would go from, so it was budgeted for $24,000 in rental income this year, we only made $10,000. But if we bring it up to market rate, or close to, and there would be like for CEI, they could do an in-kind, right? Like because they're already contributing to our entrepreneurship series, then they might get a reduction, but there'd have to be some kind of in-kind, donation. But anyway, if everything's fully rented and almost, or at market rate, then we're looking at, 53,000 instead of 10,000 for rental income, which really takes us out of it makes us income positive overnight.
Right, and that's for just the existing spaces themselves.
And we can still dream into food hub stuff and still have some things in the previous lab, and, yeah.
So one piece I think that's missing in the consideration, and maybe tell me if
Yeah.
it's been balanced out, is the recreation component. If we're talking someday of Water Street redevelopment,
Yes.
there's been conversation about kayak rentals and
Yeah.
lessons. None of those are all cool uses that have nothing to do with the river frontage that property has, and the adjacency to Harbor Park, which is really unique, and we could tap into it with some of the recreational components. How is that factoring into this conversation?
Well, what I would envision is a container, like something you can even seasonally move in or out. That's what I've seen in other places, and Rowdy and I have talked about this, so.
What's in the downstairs?
Well, it's not really big enough to like store kayaks and stuff. You could have that be the office to,
Yeah.
we need to mitigate the occasional flooding problem, but the basement could be that.
King Tide came pretty close
Yeah.
this last time around.
It's always been flooding issues down there.
Yeah, but a container could go somewhere, whether it's, I wouldn't be that close to the water, so I'm not sure if it would go in the parking lot or, and we would work with Parks and Rec
Those are-
for that too. but-
So, I'm thrilled that we're looking at how to make the best use of this. Right now, it's a mix, now that we've got some city staff in there.
Yeah.
We've got the commercial kitchen, if that's viable, and then the rented co-work space, that's all cool. But again, all of that could be anywhere else in the downtown. So what is unique about that building, and how do you capitalize on that?
I agree, like it being by the waterfront is important. What Ronnie and I talked about is even with the recreation piece, there's no reason why we can't work together, we don't have the capacity alone in that property to do everything, but Harbor Park does, and so when we're
Okay.
working together, it can
Great,
be a partnership.
that's what I wanna
Yeah.
understand, is how is that being factored into it, and we've talked too about how do we get the people who are traveling by boat, they come up and what they have available to them is bathrooms.
Yeah.
And there was a food truck, I assume that there will be more, that's what we offer them until we've got
Yeah.
Water Street, so that's another, like, what are those people looking for, what would be helpful to
Right.
them? Maybe it's just the food trucks and the
Yeah.
bathrooms, and that's all they need. But we've got such an extraordinary site there on the river and adjacent to Harbor Park,
Yeah.
that I'd love to see that factored into
Yeah, it's,
some of this.
the building itself is kinda interesting, because it does have this great location, but it's the cinder block building with high windows and just not maximize, you feel like you could be in, you don't feel like on the river until you're out there. There could be a huge deck off of that
Right.
front.
Well, there was talk of a restaurant was considered at one point with a deck, that would have been,
That's the other option, we could
Possible.
RFP it for certain type of recreational uses for the entire building, or a restaurant. I think a waterfront restaurant would be pretty incredible to
there's
see.
one in town, and it's lovely.
Yeah, so
Also for sale.
it could be something
So who knows?
we could consider as highest use, like what would somebody pay to have a 10-year lease on a waterfront
Yeah.
restaurant, or a 20-year lease? We could potentially put that out there. I think Roddy with the recreation site is like, the building itself doesn't necessarily report that. I think that I'm just probably speaking too much for the Harbor Commission now, but from what I've heard is, you know, they have some wants in the future for the harbor master kind of area, the facilities for laundry, that's what they want, is
Okay.
laundry.
Showers and
And
stuff like that, yeah.
there's also an educational component. I know Stonington has like a cool kind of field, the starfish and the this and the that for kids. You know,
So I hope that continues. I don't want to hold us beyond their schedule, but I hope that waterfront capability
I hear you.
continues to be part of the conversation about how best
Yeah,
to use this.
and maybe that's part of the entrepreneurship series we offer, and call it whatever you will, but we invite people into sessions that dream into that, or that bring ideas to it, you know, young entrepreneurs or whatever age.
Old entrepreneurs are kind of
All
cool too.
entrepreneurs. I'm curious what kind of the, you know, the HCTC, the age group would say about, like, it just, well, and to that point, we should have a broad spectrum of ages, not just one,
Yeah.
but no, I hear you, and I think that this immediately for me gets us into income positive, and it
Right.
allows us to continue dreaming into it. It's
It's
not
all
like,
been
oh, we're
terrific.
locked into this for the
Yeah.
next 10 years.
No, it's all been terrific.
We have a gentleman behind us here that.
So the
Yeah,
city
she's
owns
just
that
wanted to-
building?
Yeah.
Why does the city need to consider its use anyway? What, has there been any thought about selling the property? Why would we consider that?
well, the city bought it, especially for the harbor to ensure that it could become a community space, and then they got this big grant to develop it for the community. It was a federal grant, the governor was there, I think Senator King were there, so it was basically funded to purchase that and then develop it into this biotech space, which didn't quite work out. So I think that, to me, that is something, an option that should be there. Also, parking, and that's not the
It
greatest thing to
sounds
talk
like
about,
we're
but-
struggling to find use for something that perhaps shouldn't be used.
I think we're not I mean, it's almost fully rented and everyone loves being there, but to your point, could the
Okay.
co-working spaces be somewhere else?
It's fully rented at $10,000.
Well, but that's just because it hasn't been, like, there was a lapse in management there, and we do have a consultant helping to do day-to-day, but that can be rectified very quickly. It doesn't have to, it just,
Well, wouldn't that be the best interest of the taxpayer?
Yeah, and I think that's what we're talking about.
but it's not costing, it's a transfer now from TIF funds that can go toward that, so it's not costing the taxpayer any money right now. And it's,
At 10,000, how much is the carrying cost of that building?
no, that's what I'm saying, there's a transfer from, and it's in the city budget of $50,000 every year, that's designated economic development funds, it doesn't come out of taxpayer money. That's paying for that, so it's not costing the taxpayer anything as it is.
I should.
The operational cost of that building and any expense of that building is not costing the city taxpayers anything?
No.
Who's paying for it?
Well, it's tax increment financing, which is specifically economic development funding that can only
Okay, so
be used for that.
that's deferred, right?
Well, it's a sheltered off of the, so you can't use that money for an intended thing. However, it is taxpayer money. It is, as we've talked about before, we could, we'd have to change our laws to do so. We could.
So, okay, wait a minute. You made a statement, it's not costing taxpayer anything. If there's tax incentive financing, that in and of itself is costing taxpayer money, is it not?
Well, it's allocated for econ.
I'm not talking allocate, I'm talking cost.
Okay, it
Yeah,
goes into not the general budget, so it couldn't be.
Okay, but I'm just
Okay.
I'm trying to set the table
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah, and I'll just I know we have to get to a few other pieces here, but the intent initially, and this is what I want, this is the opportunity cost that we need to keep in mind, and I want to keep all sets on the table, and that's why I mentioned earlier, is, the city got a pretty substantial amount of money from the federal government
Right.
to design it for this purpose, so, that
But
purpose
that
didn't.
purpose isn't working.
The purpose isn't working,
So-
and
so
the
now we move on.
and so now the purpose that is working, and that we could be not just budget neutral, but budget pretty decently positive, is if we rented the whole thing out. We just want to make it rented out, and then it truly doesn't cost the city a dime.
No, it
That's,
doesn't.
that, you have a fiduciary responsibility to that tax.
However, there's also a responsibility to provide community spaces. We could also sell the entire waterfront. We could sell the Moore Community Center. We could sell Pump House Point. And we could also make but these are community assets that
I
we
would
purchase.
propose to you that if the asset is not benefiting the city in a meaningful way, and is not paying its way, then why hold on to it?
Yeah, and that's the decision point that we're working on, which is, do we wanna make it exclusively pay its way and actually be budget positive for the city? Do we wanna treat it like the Moore Community Center as a community asset for a community purpose, like the marina, like these other purposes? Do we want to sell it entirely and be done with it? Do we wanna turn it into a parking lot, cause there's parking spaces there? I think those options could be on the table, but from what I've heard from council and the community and others, and the tenants that work there, and that are already, that this is the decision to be made. Do we want to be budget positive on the building, but just as kind of a WeWork office space? Is that truly a community use for the building? Or with all the community needs for, there's a farmer's market that's there, so it's a huge community need, just like our marina
But
is
that
driving
building
a lot.
isn't gonna, the farmer's market can go lots of places.
Oh, but they really like being there.
Actually not.
Yeah.
Yes, so should it be.
And sorry, we do have a big discussion on our street scan that we need to get to. This is just an initial conversation, we'll have this again coming up soon. But we got to go to Robert for short-term rentals, very briefly, sorry.
Thank you, Twyla, that's really helpful.
I can speed talk.
Don't worry, Robert, I'm with you on this.
Okay.
We've had this discussion about short-term
We
rentals.
did talk about this briefly, yeah. All right. So, for anyone who's not aware, this short-term rental is a major part of the housing needs assessment that was done last year, or it was 26 now, so in 24. And it's also mirrored in the comp plan. Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic, short-term rental has only accelerated in Ellsworth. As you can see in my notes that I prepared, it's increased 3% in the last year, but the market is only growing. It's 2.5 times what that increase in housing in stock for short-term rental in demand.
Can you say that again?
So the demand is 2.5 times what we've increased. The increase in demand last year was 2.5 times the increase in stock.
2.5 times or 2.5%?
Times. It's 8% increase on a three.
Okay.
8% increase in demand on a 3% increase in more short-term rental that came last year.
And this is based on what you're picking up on Airbnb?
It's air DNA is it's part of the packet.
Yeah.
I would do this a little more coherently, but I'm trying to go fast, sorry. That's why it's for the packets. In 2024, 75% of short-term rentals were rented less than 180 days. Most of them were rented 90 days or fewer. Last year, that totally flipped. 60% of short-term rentals are now in Ellsworth are now 180 days or more.
Interesting.
So it's almost like a
Go.
the market is totally flipped. So what that indicates is that people are buying houses as investment properties and renting them strictly for short-term rental. They're no longer renting their house for 3 months out of the year and moving to camp. That's what the 880 days or less indicated. That they were renting a home half of the year and living in it the other half.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I can't prove that, but that's.
It could also be that people are renting them for more than.
Yeah, but they're most people are now leaving them on there for 180 days or to 360. Most of it's actually, if you look at the data.
Or are people renting for more days?
Yeah, I
Well,
assumed it was longer rental periods.
Only
but, yeah.
21% of rentals are 30 days or more.
To enhance what, if a motion come up from, anything about short-term rentals, I would have to abstain from it, because I have short-term rentals. I bought the parcel, the house, right adjacent to mine, which, basically, I can control who goes in there, all right? And I've rented houses before with apartments, all right? So, the issue is, but like Robert's brought up, there are a huge amount of people that are buying houses not even living there, but using them for short-term rentals, okay? Which, the people in the hospitality part, hospitality, if you wanna call it an industry, I would rather call it a business. They don't like short-term rentals because they take away from hotel rooms and stuff, okay? But with the amenities that I have, you're not gonna get it in a motel room, okay? And I try to get, traveling nurses, medical people, haven't been very successful with that, okay? It kind of ebbs and flows. It's worse than, you know, being out in the ocean on a stormy day. But, and some of us in short-term rental, if you want to call it a business, I'm just calling it, for me, peace of mind, because I've had bad neighbors in other municipalities I've lived at. In one municipality, the neighbors were so bad, when the place come up for sale, I bought it and tore it down. So I took a perfectly good property that could have been rental income, and I flattened it.
So to your point where you said you were trying to get, you know,
I'm trying to maintain control to make sure it's still being used in a neighborhood environment and still, like, get traveling nurses, medical people. But I've had lawyers come there, stay for 3 or 4 days because they've got a court action at the courthouse. Poof, right there, bang, you know. And I have a lot of strict restrictions, no events, no parties. I don't want to be a disturbance to my neighbors.
so you do it, you know.
I do it very strict, and I when COVID come around, I've been doing it before COVID, and I have cleaners that clean above and beyond what the COVID standards were. I'm doing it right, but there are people out there that aren't.
So I think that's the kind of question for today, really from council to, you know, if you want to proceed.
Yeah, so you do it right in that you have these high standards. The place is immaculate. It's everything's to code.
And open to the workforce housing, which
Yes.
in my mind is an important
Which-
positive consideration.
That's what I'm trying to do. And
Yeah.
So
That's good.
another piece of that, they're rented 180 days or more, but only 20% of them have a maximum stay of 30 days or more. Most of them are allowed for you know, weekends or 3 or 4 days. There isn't any. They aren't actually being used for workforce housing by and large.
I understand.
So, but where I'm actually, the crux of what I wanted to talk about tonight was, we currently don't have any idea how many we have in the city. We have an idea based on AirDNA, but not solid numbers. I also have no way to ensure health and safety. Like Pat goes above and beyond on that. His rental is up to code, everything's right, but I have no way to guarantee that they have proper egress for the bedrooms, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, that they have a proper amount of people living there that they're supposed to. So, basically what I'm asking for is if there's any interest in me pursuing this as a registration, so that we know where they are, how many they are, what their occupancies are, so, and then doing the health and safety inspections like I would do for hotel motel, like I do for any new home that's built. Any time they change from a house to an apartment, we go in and do inspections. I would be more interested in doing this on an annual basis because it's more like a hotel motel than a new house, but,
So, yes.
okay.
And I want to, I think, set a framework where what I come to this with is, of the 8 or so, 7 bullet points you've got, the bottom one, roughly 30% of housing units in Ellsworth are used for short-term rentals.
And that's, yeah.
And again, if that isn't somebody renting out a room or the granny pad or whatever, that we are taking a housing unit and converting it into hospitality. That's an issue for affordability, workforce, the economy. The other one, I guess tied to that, is the third from the bottom, 95% of the rentals are the entire dwelling unit, not a portion of a home. And I want to understand again, is that the person who moves out to camp for the summer and they rent out their house? Or is that, an investment
Well, that
company
that
comes
doesn't
in and buys it?
distinguish between length of rent. That is, they're renting the entire house.
Right.
So like, they're, rather than subletting a bedroom. That would, so like a portion of the house would be like, you rent a bedroom.
Right.
Okay. But that 95% doesn't distinguish
I guess my,
between.
So the other, well, it tells us, I think the entire dwelling unit means a greater likelihood that we are losing a housing unit
Correct.
to hospitality. Now, there's, short-term rentals are part of the mix, right? They are not bad. The
Absolutely not.
problem is, in my opinion, when we get to 30% of housing units in Ellsworth, if they are taking dwelling units out of the inventory, that's an issue.
Yeah.
And I know at the state law,
Why is it an issue?
because the state,
why?
because this is a workshop and we've only got so much time, because it impacts.
You're dominating it, so,
Because it's a council workshop.
right?
There is, all right, it is an issue because one of the primary limiting factors for businesses to expand in this area is affordable housing for their workforce. And if this is impinging on the availability of housing units for the workforce, it's impacting the economy of this area, which impacts all of us and the city itself. And let me, if I could just finish with,
and I do think we need a much longer discussion on this one for the next workshop, because
that's fine.
because Robert's gonna be getting, like, we're talking right now about just the registration component. There is we wanna go down the route of regulatory piece, that this is gonna suck up all the political.
Right now, I'm thinking registration, because we need to understand more of these numbers. What are they? What is that 30%?
I'm only estimating 30% just based on
Okay,
how many I know are in Ellsworth and how many houses
right.
Larry
So-
told me we have in Vision. Like, I can do that math.
Right. So to be able to
You
get
get
that information more clearly and more accurately is what the value of the
Mhm.
registration
And
is.
I do wanna get to streetscape, but Miranda, did you have it?
I was just gonna add on to the point of affordable housing. This is, my employer Jax built apartments to make sure that there are enough workers, and many people commute onto the island and live in Ellsworth. So this is a huge problem that I
Yeah.
cannot stress enough.
To be honest,
I do actually have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of how long it would take to do a registration, or how that?
Well, that's why I want to get it started now, so I can properly budget for it. That's why I wanted to make sure that I had to go, so I can start to budget. But I'm hoping to have the registration in place either by late spring or early summer, so that we can capture the summer traffic.
Yeah, start building the data set here, and I think, we could start, maybe we'll do a full workshop in this, we'll go a little
Yeah,
further.
I get a little more detail.
So come in on but it seems like registration piece first, not the, and we'll talk further. The second piece, I'm a very kind of property rights are inviolate, and I haven't seen the use case yet of a town regulating short-term rentals, and then there's affordable housing everywhere. Bar Harbor's a pretty good example of that. So,
I didn't follow that, but we'll.
that's the thing, I like to, whenever I hear about a regulation that's gonna create solve a macroeconomic issue that's free to the council, like, I'm always like, it's kind of like rent freezes. Might have a 20-year effect that actually decreased your availability of housing. But to me, there's a huge new, that's a different zone. This kind of first piece is the data. I can definitely see wanting to see data on these pieces. Registration with a nominal fee potentially.
a lot of them can be found by going to Airbnb, Vivo, there's another, a lot of them use these other organizations. I found working with Airbnb that works the best. They take the lodging tax out, they take the cleaning fees out, and that
Yeah,
one,
and
because
the state takes 9%, I think, right now, as a lodging tax out of the
Yeah.
short-term rental market, right?
So
The city
so
doesn't.
it's, You had a question?
Yeah, I think you could probably streamline your effort for registration by contacting the state revenue department, because they track that. The taxes get remitted to the state of Maine, and I'm sure they can give you, I can't imagine they can't query that by zip code.
There are those, I could have opted out and paid the taxes myself, but
Yeah,
it's
but-
so much simpler, and I tried another organization that,
Yeah,
I didn't.
but
anyway.
Vibro and Airbnb is probably 99% of the market.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll start working on a potential workshop that's gonna have a good 45 minutes budgeted for this, a little more meat on the bones on the registration market and kind of previewing. I think this one, will be a little more contentious, probably need some time, but I do want to get to street scan, which is hopefully not as contentious, it's pretty cool.
Pressure here now.
How contentious this
Yep.
was, we all agreed to look at a registration.
Before we go any further,
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you that I hate this format because the audience is not getting a fair shake in this format. People that are raising their hands, can't see them, we need to be up there and run this like a regular council meeting.
I think one of the things that we brought this, and we can keep talking about the format, but was to really create a space for staff and the council that really don't have an opportunity until the council meeting, and then it becomes a yes/no. So it's always, we want to make this open to the public, we don't want to make people here, but there's also and we have the public option for the council meetings to discuss this. We also, it's live, so people can send in emails, they can send in other pieces, but it's really important, for us and the staff that feel like they try to prepare all of these things for the council, and it's the first time they've ever had to have that counts, because it's illegal for us to not do it in open forum, in open session like this. So it's a real loss. And we'd love to get the community feedback on these pieces. There's other opportunities for that. But
I work for Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth, and I think that we need to recognize them as a problem. Let's go on.
and if we could bring up Amanda and the street scan presentation.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Did you find all the streets?
Did I find them all?
No, did they? You sent them out hunting and seeking for it, and the sidewalks too.
So this presentation summarizes the results of our citywide pavement and sidewalk assessment. The goal is to give council a clear picture of current conditions and how this data will guide future infrastructure investments. The assessment was completed using CityLogic's automated street scan technology, which provides objective, repeatable results. Before we begin, it's important to note that this data is dynamic. Conditions will change over time due to a variety of factors, such as repairs, maintenance, ongoing deterioration, and fluctuations in material and construction costs. Today's presentation represents a snapshot of the most current information available, and the data will continue to evolve as work is completed and conditions change. Some of the cost estimates are also like a default, so they're not set to our specific costs yet, but we will get there. So begin with an overview of the pavement assessment results. I'll review the sidewalk conditions, and then finally we'll walk through some recommended next steps for how we're going to use this data to make smart decisions. Section 1. The city assessed 71 miles of roadway broken into approximately 425 individual road segments. Each segment was evaluated using the Pavement Condition Index, or PCI, which is an industry standard scoring system. PCI scores range from 0 to 100, with 100 representing excellent condition. The assessment identifies pavement distresses, their severity, and recommends appropriate treatments. Ellsworth's current average PCI score is 72.7, which places the network in generally good condition overall. examples of different types of deterioration. PCI is based on visible surface distresses such as cracking, rutting, and surface wear. Each distress is evaluated by type, severity, and extent. These factors are combined into a single score that allows us to compare roads objectively and prioritize investments. This is an image of what the car kind of looks like, with the scanning equipment on the top. They scanned our roads in October, so you may have seen something similar to this in October. PCI scores are grouped into condition categories ranging from excellent to serious. This helps translate technical scores into understandable condition levels. Roads in lower categories typically require more costly rehabilitation, while higher scoring roads benefit most from preventative maintenance. Here's a map of our roads color-coded by PCI score. When you click on a section of road,
Can I just interrupt you 1 second, Amanda? Just go back to that map for 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But I just wanted to point out that we did city-owned roads. So that's why there's some blue on there. Those are the state-owned roads that we are we're responsible for winter maintenance, but not any sort of reconstruction or preventative maintenance.
or like this section here, you see like down here, this road is kind of in no man's land. This road is Bayside Road, which is state.
We did do the state roads in the urban compact though.
Yes.
Just to have that clear
It
picture of.
stops right
It
about
stops
there.
right here, which is, that's Beachland Road. That goes
And
up there.
we did that because the state does have an municipal partnership initiative program that allows us to partner with them. So we did want to know what the PCI for some of those roads that would be eligible for that was. So sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you for explaining that. So once you click on a segment of road, this asset profile comes up. It contains the information such as the PCI score, which is up in the top corner here, and it's color-coded as well. There's the maintenance suggestion based on the score. Then there's an estimated cost, and that's based on the unit cost, so square yards, how much does a reclaim cost per square yard multiplied by the square yards of that segment. Then there is some photos of the scan. When you're in the software itself, you can click and it will kind of slowly flip through the photos for that road, or that piece of road, I should say. So the top 10 worst segments based on pavement condition. This slide highlights the 10 lowest scoring road segments in the city based solely on their pavement condition. These segments represent our most critical condition-based pavement needs. It's important to note that these rankings do not account for traffic volume or roadway usage and are based strictly on the condition of the pavement. To address this,
Sorry, 1 second, Amanda. So what that is also saying is it doesn't give us kind of deterioration rates. Because usage is gonna make your road deteriorate quicker, especially if it's a high truck route or something like that. So it's just giving the snapshot of like the condition right now, but not the deterioration rate.
So to address this, we are working with City Logics to develop an additional roadway classification. They have the roads classified by like a minor collector, major collector, local roads. So we suggested separating local roads into minor local roads and major local roads. So that will give us another layer of busier local roads that may have a faster deterioration.
I mean, before you leave this, what is the scale on the bottom this year?
Oh, sorry, I meant to go back and I didn't, that's the PCI score.
Okay.
I was supposed to move that picture up so you could see that, but it's the PCI score.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry about that.
So with Garden Street, that doesn't get much traffic. I know where the street is located. And it's a very old street. So the maintenance on that street has been shoved off and pushed down and pushed to the bottom of the barrel. So sometimes traffic volume doesn't really reflect, it just means neglect
Like
by.
people are avoiding it because it's in bad
Well,
shape, you mean, or?
No,
Oh.
it just been neglected,
Yeah,
neglected,
Yeah.
okay? It's not a very wide street. If anything, the street, if it did get repaired, at best, as far as the width of it, in my opinion, then, and when I say in my opinion, it's based upon my experiences with roads, should be classified as one way. Because you can't, two motor vehicles cannot meet and pass each other on it. You see what I mean? But it serves as a valued asset. May not seem like it to a lot of people, but, you know.
Somebody's driving their car over it every day.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this is really helpful too to, all right, these are the conditions, the worst
yeah.
types of roads,
These are
but
the
now
worst
also
roads.
we can see how much they kind of, in general, cost. Obviously, these are kind of based on the formulas that are in the system, but then also like, what are the most used? What are, like, you know, and that, so we can kind of layer on a bunch of different data to say like, you know, is that Gary Moore Road? That's the most expensive. It's also in the worst condition, but is one Gary Moore Road worth, you know, doing all the other ones in terms of track volume, there's other pieces. Now, there's a capital improvement planning discussion that Sarah's putting together as part of the 1, 5, and 10 year, because roads are a big portion of our capital assets we need to repair. We did a huge investment, both between the city and the state. We looked at $20 million in road improvements in the city of Ellsworth last year.
And yes, the Gary Moore Road is in hard shape, but that was a road, I remember that was dirt from where it come off in 180 all the way.
And there's some pieces like the Bayside Road might not make it on this category. I think it's in the yellow, but that is one of our most frequented areas. And if we bring that up to a level 3 built status for the
Level
municipal,
2.
level 2 status from with the municipal partnership initiative that we pay half and half, then the state will maintain it pretty much in perpetuity going forward.
Right.
And that one is used, you know, like High Street almost at times.
Yeah, and there's another layer, I mean, these are just, this is very new data, so we wanted to get it to you as quick as possible. So this is like a snapshot of the, you know, again, the top 10. But there's another layer about what are the top 10 roads that are deteriorating the quickest. Because that's gonna be another level of treatments that might be way more expensive than this. And next year, this, I don't know what the total is on this, but you know, there might be something that's even worse than Gary Moore because we didn't treat it now.
Right.
Right.
So.
And it could be piecemeal,
Exactly.
like the Gary Moore Road and the Happy Town Road. Those roads have been piecemealed along. So as soon as you get a short section done, the section that you did 5 years ago is now reaching that, you see, I mean, so you got hopscotching all the way
And the
through.
cost for each of these treatments is drastic.
Oh, yeah.
So as long as you can keep it in that mill fill and not dip down to reconstruction, reclaim, that's your secret sauce right there.
Right.
So you're not getting into the higher ticketed, treatments.
Addressing poor condition roads early can prevent further deterioration and higher long-term repair costs. This combined, data-driven approach will help staff focus limited resources more effectively and align investments with real-world use. So just one last thing before we go to the next slide is, the PCI score at the bottom, the lowest is the worst. So the worst condition is Maple Street.
Oh, interesting.
But because reconstruction costs more per square yard than reclaim, it might, and it's also determined by, the cost is also determined by the length of that section. So if Maple Street is, that section between the end of Maple Street and Laurel Street is shorter than the section of, like, say, the Gary Moore Road, that would affect the cost as well, based on them. So the decision tree shows, it's kind of small print up there, but the decision tree shows at the bottom, there's reconstruction, reclaim, mill and fill, overlay, and defer maintenance. So underneath reconstruction, it says unit cost is $625 per square yard. So like for the example of the Garden Street, the maintenance suggestion on the previous slide was a reclaim, which is an estimated cost of $200 per square yard based on these default costs. These aren't local true costs for us yet. We can change those to match our costs so that we have a better idea. So Garden Street is 1,203 square yards, so 1,203 multiplied by 200 is where the $240,600 came from on the previous slide. So this is a map. The red are the 10 worst that were on that list. This is a map of those sections. Gary Moore Road was way off the map, so I just put the little map on the top, see?
But we can,
See that
we
section?
can filter queries through this software, like if we wanted to do daily traffic or, you know, the last treatment or things like that, we can come up with, or if we wanted to put in, we have $5 million.
Yeah.
What are the roads we should do?
Yeah.
What's gonna give us our best, you know, value? There's all different ways to query the data.
Have you been inputting the history of what we've actually done, I don't know, going back 10 years or so? Like our
So-
road construction?
They scanned the condition, so it's like the base point was October. So anything prior to October, that score, like if it was just redone in September, that should have a high score.
Yeah.
And then any maintenance that was done after, we have started going in and logging those events, but that's part of our next steps, is to finish kind of customizing and validating the data to make sure that it's aligned with, because there were some that were done in November. There was a handful that were done in November so they were scanned in October in their poorest condition, and now they have had an event that we need to log to bring the score up.
What is maybe I missed it, I don't think, but you mentioned the Bayside Road, a lot of traffic, I've heard a lot of complaints about that. Where did that line up, or can you tell me?
I can.
The first slide, I think, had it with the red, yellow, greens on the entire.
You have to understand, it's also broken into like several segments, so there might be some,
Workers' comp.
That's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Bayside.
so that yellow, so that might not be a red, but we get that guy to green and into a rebuilt or a built road status for the state. And we split the cost half and half with the MPI. Now the state every 6 years. 7 years is gonna be repaving that on their maintenance schedule. And that one might be a real high value one. It might not be red, but
That's why I'm asking that question, because I hear a lot of complaints, and I know there's a lot of traffic.
Yeah, so that's the thing that we're gonna get, this is giving us a snapshot of like our PCIs, but then I think we are gonna have to put like a human factor onto this of like what we know is happening out on these roads and what opportunities there are like that. Like the MPI opportunity,
Right.
that will take that off our responsibility. You know, it's not our responsibility technically now, but it's the only way the state's gonna kind of partner with us on it, so.
and these are all like videotapes, so you can be like, all right, that might be a good one for crack seal. Like, let's get a little bit of save on this, crack seal a bunch. You know, it's not just reclaim, the reconstruction, the repave, the skinny coats.
The reason why the Bayside Road and Water Street takes quite a beating is because a lot of the traffic of the workers down on the island have figured out a little secret that somebody like me has known for years.
Well, right.
And
Okay.
to avoid High
To-
Street.
To avoid High Street.
What everybody can appreciate,
I do
there's a lot of
And-
complaints.
And when
but
they
this is
follow
green
somebody
now.
like me with a dump truck,
And this, like earlier this year, this
Well,
was
Google
probably
Maps routes
yellow or
them that way
red.
because it's less
That's
traffic.
probably helped our score tremendously.
I'm better
Yeah.
at Google Maps. I
Well,
know
and
where-
I think that's
Definite
reflective that
for
DOT is
tourists.
looking at upgrading the priority of Bayside. It's because it's basically becoming a parallel route to High Street.
Yes.
And not just in July and August, for
Oh, yeah.
several months out of the year.
They're still using it right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can see some of these ones in
It's
town,
today.
right? Like this
Yeah,
one.
to Walgreens.
Yeah.
That one strikes out at me as like
Funnel to the
probably
island.
you know, one that
So
is
that,
gonna
I
Perfect.
believe that was Hancock Street, which was done in November. So
Okay.
that
Yeah,
has
I
changed,
could
that
see that.
will be updated once we go through and update.
be glad to know we picked a good one, even without the, without the street scale.
Years ago, and there's been, when I say years ago, the state offered several times to the city to put a bypass in. And each time, no. Because it didn't want to take traffic away from downtown. Okay? Now, it's cost prohibitive. Because where it was gonna originally come down, go across where the Red Bridge Road is, all the way down around and cross the river.
I think we're going, Council Shay, even more than short-term rentals, bringing back the bypass conversation.
Yeah.
Not on Redbridge Road.
I'll miss that.
That's, if you thought it took the state a long time to do the Route 9 change, yeah.
And sorry, we do have sidewalks too,
Yeah.
and we wanna.
Yeah, Section 2, sidewalk assessment. In addition to roads, the city assessed 10 miles of sidewalks. Sidewalks were evaluated using the Sidewalk Condition Index, or SCI, which also ranges from 0 to 100. The SCI focuses on pedestrian safety issues such as tripping hazards, cracks, uplifts, and surface distortions. Ellsworth average SCI score is 62.2, indicating fair overall condition with room for improvement. There's some, these are actual pictures of some of our sidewalk distortions.
That's a good word.
I know one that's got grass growing on it.
SCI evaluates factors that directly impact walkability and accessibility. These include vertical displacement, cracking, and surface defects. This data supports ADA compliance efforts and helps prioritize pedestrian safety improvements. And this is what the scooter looks like with the scanning. They were here earlier in the year, August or September, with the little scooter. Similar to the PCI, the SCI scores are grouped into condition categories. These categories make it easier to communicate sidewalk conditions and risks to the public and decision makers. Lower scoring sidewalks often indicate higher liability and safety concerns. So this is a map of our sidewalks coded by SCI scores.
Those are some great colors you got there.
Nice variety of color.
And this does not include any like informal sidewalks, like the sidewalk coming down from China Hill, like
Yes.
that, it does not include that.
So again, when you click on a segment of sidewalk, a color-coded segment of
You're
sidewalk,
missing Birch Avenue
you get
sidewalk.
an assessment profile. With the detailed assessment profile, again, you have the PCI, the SCI score up here in the corner. Then the maintenance suggestion, reconstruction, and estimated cost. Again, that's based on the same formula as the pavement index as well. And then there's a video. This is
Is there a person on this scooter, or was this automated? Oh.
Yeah.
What a great job.
Wow.
I was thinking I could put my retirement down.
Oh, yeah.
Like stopped up there, but there we go.
Did any dogs chase the?
He didn't
Oh,
say
there's a
that
pole,
he
there's a
did.
pole right in the middle.
Yes.
So here's
Love
our
that.
ADA.
Yeah, love that.
That's my favorite.
The high street special.
Love to be in a mobility device to get around that.
I mean, you can place your wheelchair on
If you took a
80%
right on
of the
Birch
sidewalk.
Avenue, took a right on Birch Avenue up through all that grass there. There used to be a sidewalk just like that on School Street.
Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, take that sidewalk right there. We wanna redo that. We're gonna have to make it ADA accessible. We're gonna have to relocate that pole. and that's inexpensive, you know, so, yeah, it's interesting on how do we factor that in? We wanna be as ADA as accessible as possible, and at the same time, like, we have some really terribly conditioned sidewalks, so. how do
And we're
we-
required to.
We have
We're
to.
required, yeah.
Have to.
It's not like an option,
Right.
so it's like, do we just leave it alone because it's so expensive to have to redo those poles, or do we?
Well, do
Just
we
like the one
consider-
going up Birch Avenue, they abandoned that. That was wide enough to make it ADA compliant and still have grass between the sidewalk and the street.
I should also note the local roads funding that we have, I think it's like 260,000 for this year, which we still have remaining to us. You know, I think that is allowable now
Yep.
to be used on sidewalks. And I think when you see the conditions of some of our sidewalks, you know, and the fact that we just did 2 million in local roads, you know, coupled with 18 million in state roads, investment in Ellsworth, feels like the sidewalks this spring, you know, I can see that being, you know, once the weather is appropriate to do a bit of investments.
And I would just note that ADA compliance, there's a lot, not just width. It's, you know, for deaf, blind, mobility, people using mobility devices. And if there's a signal there, if it's signalized at all, that also has to be ADA compliant.
So, Amanda, does it do, what about sidewalks on both sides of the road? Does it track both or just one side?
So they would have scanned any paved sidewalk,
Yeah.
regardless of side of road.
Okay,
or
so
two
the
sides.
scoring is both together?
Yeah.
Okay, and
So it would be a separate, I believe it would be a separate segment
Yeah.
of
Okay.
pavement. Like, so on the next slide, it shows the top 10 worst, and if you see, like, the second one says Main Street, Main to Main, #1, then there's a Main Street, Main to Main, #2. I don't know if those are
Yeah.
side by side or
Right.
one to the
Yeah.
next to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And the reconstruction does not take into account the ADA, okay, so those numbers are far off.
So we
from what
should
they would
probably,
actually
we can work, because it's just like the actual construction dollars, but we can work on coming up with an average ADA cost multiplier to put on if it is, you know, depending on what the part of the sidewalk. If it's just the middle segment, that's probably gonna be much easier. It
Right.
gets to be expensive when you get to your intersection.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like there's a few different ways to go about this. You know, one is like, okay, how would we maximize, you know, mileage for dollar, and that would be avoiding the reconstructing a lot of the ADA sections, but that's not really fair. To me, I kind of feel like it's like the routes, right? What are the, like the most trafficked routes, the most amount of people, and let's get those, including ADA accessibility, up to snuff, and keep kind of taking that as a
And
priority.
as someone who depends upon walking and actually has walked from the house to the school, that is one of the biggest things you consider when you're walking, because you can't leapfrog. It has to be a decent course to get from A to B.
When you're ADA, for ADA accessibility.
And I think we need to look at where there are missing segments. So, I mean, it's great to upgrade a sidewalk, but if it's a sidewalk to nowhere, what's, you know, like, what's the additional?
It's like, okay, the sidewalk that goes from, above, it goes from where the nursing home is, which is, used to be Seacoast, but it's something else. But anyways, from there, all the way down Oak Street to Main Street, used to be a sidewalk. And I bet you that's probably not in the scan because, yeah.
No, but it's gonna be on the DOT Oak Street project.
But I'm just saying, that's,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that could be another one, is like,
Yeah.
well, that section would connect these two, maybe we need to build a sidewalk there, so that,
Yeah.
maybe we need to look into that.
And
This gives us.
I think that the framework part of what we're talking about, there are areas where they should be upgraded and they should be improved, and to your point, there are some we can abandon. I don't know if you intended that, but.
Yeah.
no,
We
not
don't-
really, because,
It's the same
because
with
it's like.
roads, it depends on, is it worth the
there-
investment
there would-
to be able to keep
there
it
would-
going?
There's quite a bit of foot traffic
Then
from
it's worth doing.
Birch Avenue,
Yeah,
which they tend to take shortcuts anyways, but,
but
yeah.
I think the other key too is, do we consider sidewalks to be part of our transportation infrastructure or not? If they are, then
It's-
they're
Yes.
It's, you know, it's part of,
And it is part of the economics
the
of the
foot
area.
trails, you know, and,
I think it's part of like the friendly city.
But-
Ability of this.
Yeah.
but that being said, there's also places in the city that, like, the area above Birch Avenue, on the other side of Oak Street, with minus sidewalks up through Parcher Street and all of those little streets up in there. Like, there's a little short section of sidewalk on Bayview Avenue.
Yeah, but I know we're over a little bit,
I
Yeah,
apologize.
sure.
And here's the thing, the more people you have able to walk from A to B, the less cars are on the road, and that's gonna help hopefully with road maintenance and the deterioration rate as well.
and I should also note, while we have the 260 is kind of what we have generally penciled in for some sidewalk repair based on the state funding for that this year. You know, we'll kind of come back with a more defined plan. But also I know Danielle's working and Brittany on a Thriving Communities Initiative and Twyla and on kind of intermodality, walkability. There's a lot, like I said, like not in addition to green space or food serve networks, like there's also this big kind of grant space in the walkability, livability space too. So how can we get some grant funding here?
I mean, most of these sidewalks are within the VPI too.
Yeah.
So,
And my understanding is that the state, if we are going to pursue funding available from the state, the multimodal component of the project will give us like higher merit for that
and there's separate buckets of
application.
money just for multimodal.
Yeah.
So those are the other two things. Is it a VPI? Is it a thriving community?
Yeah.
Well, let's not spend on the, the state
Right.
reimbursement.
Oh, no,
dollars
no,
now.
no.
Let's hold off until we get those 9-to-1 matches.
And the whole spreadsheet of scores for the sidewalks was sent to Brittany for, I don't know if it was.
Oh, yeah, we shared it with
Yeah.
the Thriving Communities.
So how much of this will we,
Consultant.
this was a great presentation, thank you.
I still have some more left.
Keep going, keep
So,
going.
I just wanted to point out on this one, again, I cut off the scores that were along the bottom. It was 0, none of these are over 20. So 0 to 20 is the lowest, and so the gray is what they would consider failed.
And so I saw you had a hand up over there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I thought you were done,
Oh, that's okay.
I could have waited.
No, that's okay.
But, I just wanted to say that this is the best approach to the infrastructure as opposed to the way we were going about it in the past. In the past, it was a helter-skelter, well,
Well, complaint driven, how about we
outside,
call it
right,
that?
helter-skelter.
It's reactive.
And this is great data, I mean, yes, it was costly, but it was an independent view, with some science in it, and I think this is extremely helpful.
So this is the sidewalk decision tree, very similar to the pavement one. So at the bottom, it shows reconstruction at $400 per square yard. Partial replacement is $200, and grinding and then deferred maintenance have their own. And again, those are just pre-filled. We have to determine what our local costs would be for that to get an accurate amount. And then here is the map of the sidewalk, the 10 worst sidewalk segments. So there's a couple down here.
So Nancy, you can see up on the
This is
Main
the
Street,
main
it looks like there's
street,
both directions
big
there.
long one here, and then there's
Where are you
this.
seeing that?
Right there where
Oh,
she's
here, at
circling.
that intersection.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then the two gray I highlighted in blue because everything else on this map is gray, so.
And
The two blue here is actually the gray from the.
I think these ones were redone by the state once they finished
I
that.
can,
Because that was with the two intersections where they like cut them out when they did High Street.
Hmm.
So those might be in better shape now. The ones on Upper Main and then, what's that one that cuts across, is that Hancock or is that?
so this is the Hancock.
Yeah.
That one, yeah. And those ones
I
on,
can confirm that.
those ones further down on High Street I know are not.
Yeah, Hancock's pretty rough.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see especially that Hancock
All
and those
of
other
it.
ones on High
Franklin
Street.
Street didn't have much sidewalks.
Well,
because-
it's on other sides, all you have to do is run across the road in the middle, and you got
Well,
sidewalks.
that's what I have to do up south of
Yeah.
State Street too.
It- you know,
Anyways, yeah.
because of the different businesses that were located on Franklin Street,
Got it.
so.
Get it?
So some of our next steps, to validate and customize the data, like we were talking about, logging the repair and maintenance that have happened since they scanned. enter the actual local construction and repair costs, and to verify segment accuracy and correct any scanning discrepancies. Prioritize improvements, apply the right treatments, inform the budget and capital planning processes, and then monitor the progress over time. So staff will use this data to develop multi-year pavement and sidewalk maintenance plans. The information supports budget planning, grant applications, and transparent communication with residents. Ongoing assessments will allow the city to track progress and adjust strategies over time. This data-driven approach ensures we're investing the right treatment on the right asset at the right time.
Exactly.
And I just wanna thank Amanda, because she's really been the project manager on all of this, and she's done a really amazing job, and she is the whiz, so if you know something about your road.
Is that like being the bomb?
Yeah, the bomb, yeah, she's definitely the bomb.
So, let's see, this, I actually have it up here. This is like the actual website that we log into to get information, like
And
the
when do we get
dashboard.
counselors logins
So,
to this?
that'll be
Cool.
So you guys can kind of see your own data, and it is pretty fun and interactive, it kind of gamifies some of this.
It's an amazing tool. This is
Yeah.
true.
And there's budgeting pieces and, you know, when we get all those figures in there, like Sarah was saying, you can say, this is how much money we have this year, what are we gonna get the most for our money to fix, so.
And it
there's
might
those
even
tools.
help with the river walk, okay, because you used to be able to walk. You're not right directly on the water on the river walk, okay? There are portions of along the river that are still there. You know, like I said, from bottom of the dam, we, under the guidance of Mr. Bear, our social studies teacher at the time, said, we're not going any further than that. Mr. Shea, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Allen, get back over here. Yeah, but it went down along through, and it used to be an old roadway there.
I think a key factor of the whole thing that we just saw is the city needs to not just identify what's needed. We need to put a plan together and do something every single year. We can't just look at the data. We have to make a commitment to doing X amount every single year. Now, I know that's painful.
Yep.
But what happened recently is everything gets kicked against the wall, and then there's an overreaction. So I think we need to really focus on commitment every single year and put this data to use.
Because this is the best it's ever gonna be.
Correct.
This is, right now, it's our roads and our sidewalks are the
Correct.
best they're gonna be, unless we continue to do
So
it.
we need to put a plan.
So what, to that point, when do we see the capital investment plan that you've been working on? Is that months away still?
February.
Okay,
believe
that's
we're-
apparently next month.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's why I was like,
February for
So
workshop or
we'll-
for?
to
no,
be
there.
I think
Council.
March for workshop, because I don't think we're gonna get it until February, and we're gonna have
Okay.
to like
Okay,
massage it and make sure it's all.
Because February workshop, we do have ordinance.
No, you can have that. I will go to March.
I might have
Yeah,
to do
February
a lunch
workshop will be
longer.
comprehensive ordinance discussion too.
With traffic,
Strap in.
with
thank you.
with figuring out traffic, it's easy to do because technicians have counters, Maine DOT, they set up all kinds of fancy counters. The counters that Maine DOT has now can even tell you how many tires, how many axles, what the weight is, okay? With sidewalk, there's no real tracking of how many foot traffic goes down through unless you take in for information of somebody.
We don't even actually need counters anymore, because we use it, the state, has access to all cell data, which does count walkers.
Okay.
So we can use it all, it's all cell phone, and it doesn't have to, it's just if you're carrying a cell phone, it's tracking it.
So, yeah.
And
Sorry
so-
to bust your bubble.
No,
That's
but I
happening.
mean, like I said, there's a little technology, I just
To your point, Steve, on kind of how this layers, like,
Yeah.
it's one thing just to think, hey, wow, that's really neat, we have $50 million in roads and we're all up to greens or this and that, but like, the financing, how that's gonna layer into our budgets. You know, we've been doing a lot of digital upgrades on these pieces, you know, Sarah will have this capital improvement plan, which this is a big piece of.
But this is one part of.
So then we'll be able to kind of prioritize based on those other pieces, and then, you know, I know we've started some digital modernizations, this is one piece of it. There also is OpenGov has a capital improvement planning module that I think, you know, will be, once we get the capital improvement plan, that we, you know, that's gotta be updated every single year, part of our budget process, and what our investment's gonna be based on all those pieces, and like the institutional pieces. You know, that was one of the kind of shocking things of the city growing of Ellsworth size, like what are the state of the roads, what are the state of this, what is the cap? It doesn't exist, so we're doing some foundational work here, but I don't wanna have happen what happened before, which is some foundational work was done. I know, you know, in the kind of Tammy, Michelle years, they were holding big massive books and spreadsheets, and when there were counselors here, we'd be up in the attics trying to find their binder, because that's the only thing that could tell us like what is it, and like some of those binders are here, some of them weren't, and like that's not, and now we're going into this new age of not so human-centric, but system-centric, to have these tracks. So if Tabitha comes back 10, 15 years from now and says, hey, how are we doing on those, like bring up, we'll have all that data, we'll be able to track it in there, our water systems, our sewer systems too.
If I could just speak one little thing before we jump, I just want to add to that, is I would like to know, in our commitment to the roads in the city, I'd like to know the ratio of excise tax that people are paying that's supposed to go into the roads. The whole purpose of excise tax is infrastructure. And I would really like to see the balance there, because I think over the years, the excise tax has gotten used for purposes for survival, not the roads. And I think we need to establish some sort of ratio to that going forward in our commitment to putting this data to work. And I'm sorry I jumped in front of you. Can I hear from you now?
Yeah, question, the roads that were identified as green, right? They, at some point, the state shares in responsibility for upkeep or repaving, or how's that work?
No.
So no, I mean, it depends on there. So we did some like inside the urban compact zone that are actually state roads, state maintained ones. So you saw that High Street, right? If we would have done this street, it was all green. But if we did this in February of last year, it would have been all red, probably, or close to it. So now the state maintains that, that's a green road. But there was that
We do the
Bayside.
capital maintenance, we do the
Okay.
highway maintenance.
My question is, once it turns green and the state takes over, what do they do?
For the
It's
state
green
roads.
because
What
it's
happens
in
if
good
it's no
condition.
longer green, if it degrades?
So the state has a program where they, based on the priority road, like High Street is a priority 2 road. Like priority 1 is the interstate. There's no other really priority 1s besides the interstate. Priority 2 are the Route 1s, Route 3s. The state has a regular cadence for how they upgrade and maintain those, because they never want to get a priority 2 road to get to be below a level where they have to.
So it can never go
rate-
back to the city for maintaining it because?
No, because it's a state-owned asset.
In some ways, this is about getting the city roads to be treated the way the state treats their roads.
Right.
And the
Get them to this
green-
level and then keep them at this level, and don't let these types of roads.
Oh, so the city roads can never be accepted by the state for,
No.
okay.
They
Well,
would
there's
never-
some, and there's some like that are kind of hybrids, right? Like the Bayside Road is this.
That's in the urban compact,
So
the
this is a
city,
route- a
this
route.
is, well, the city has to maintain it for
Right.
winter maintenance. The state has to do any capital repair, so culvert repairs, if it had to be anything other than an overlay. So if it has to be mill and filled or reconstructed, the state is responsible for doing that, not the city.
But the Bayside Road, which is,
Exact-
you know, for a certain section of it, is an unbuilt road, and it's not into that tiered status of getting repaved, so that's one that we might wanna consider as a municipal partnership initiative with the state to get that to built status, and then the state's gonna do that every 7 years.
Because they're also reprioritizing it, because of the volume, it was prioritized 100 years ago. So now that there's more volume on that, they're reprioritizing it, so that will get it in that queue for regular maintenance.
And that's one of the reasons that
maintenance.
we added some of the state roads in the urban compact, so we could, you know.
Tell our story about what roads are really bad.
Right.
One thing that I think might be beneficial just to throw out is, just because the state agrees to do something, doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna get done in a timely fashion that we would like to have it done.
Although the MPIs are pretty good, they,
Right, I mean, I think municipalities struggle with this with the state all across, because, you
Yeah.
know, yes, like High Street, for example, let's say that what didn't get done. People who are driving High Street don't care if it's a state road, think they're in Ellsworth. So we have to make that tough decision sometimes. When
Yeah,
I worked for the MPOs, cities were always struggling with how to do that. And if they should, because you set that precedence and then,
yeah, and I wanted nothing to do with
But the
the
MPIs are
credit on that
perfect.
road this spring, when everybody's complaining about High, and why'd you do this? No, but now I wanna take all, oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Just beautiful High Street.
There's roads within the city that's within the DOT compact that the state will dump money to on High Street. And there's state aid roads that don't really have a route number.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm
And
just
they
so
won't
excited.
plow it,
Just
but
go run
we'll go up